to 12 Rules for What? My name is Sam.
I'm Alex.
And we're going to be talking about the Brexit Party, UKIP.
Tommy Robinson.
And a tiny bit about the European elections. We need to talk about why the Brexit Party is founded at all. So basically, what was the hole left by UKIP? What has happened to UKIP in the last 3 years?
So the argument I've seen is that it's kind of good because UKIP doesn't have this. Clearly, UKIP doesn't have this strong support because all the UKIP base left UKIP and voted for the Brexit Party, which is obviously which is obviously dumb because all it speaks to is the cult of Nigel Farage and his ability to mobilise 25% of 30% of the MEP voting electorate will just vote for him no matter what vehicle he's in. Basically, that's terrifying because he's essentially wields he's going to be the front runner for while he's still alive. He's still running.
Yeah, I think your comment about Tommy Robinson having an audience, not a movement, is even more relevant in the case of Nigel Farage. Right, he's the person who has an audience, has a kind of people who will just kind of do whatever he says. And what we're kind of seeing on the right, instead of a kind of convergence of these two positions, actually what we're seeing is increasingly many splits between these positions. So we're getting a high Tory position that Nigel Farage takes, and we're getting a kind of a street movement, increasingly far close to the kind of white nationalists, right? Generation Identity are now showing up at UKIP events.
I mean, they always have been.
They always have been kind of circling around, but they're there, showing their flags, trying to recruit from the UKIP base. The biggest single increase in UKIP membership ever, as far as I can tell, was during June 2018, which is the beginning of the Free Tommy movement. So they were loads of people were turning out for Free Tommy events. Tommy Robinson was increasingly aligning himself to UKIP, and people were joining UKIP via that. And so what really UKIP has really done, instead of disappear, is just harden, solidify. Loads of the kind of more high Tory support has gone over to the Conservatives and now to the Brexit Party, but they may be still in the Conservative Party, but they're voting Brexit. And this small group of people has kind of really densified their position, and they're becoming increasingly far right.
I mean, I think the UKIP were always they always flirted in their most contemporary formation. They always flirted with far right politics. Always, you just think of Farage in the referendum campaign with that big poster of all the queues of immigrants trying to get into Britain.
Oh, it's much worse than that. So in 2005, they would have an electoral pact with the BNP. After they both outcompeted each other, and they was acknowledged by both parties they were competing for the same constituency. And Nigel Farage said, absolutely not, we're not going to have this kind of alliance between the two parties. And so Nigel Farage is kind of an odd figure here, because in some way he's kind of containing UKIP, which has always had these kind of virulent racist elements in it. And he's just kind of putting an acceptable face on it and even kind of containing some of that. So as soon as he disappears, he's kind of taken out like a nuclear containment rod. The entire thing kind of goes much further.
For this campaign, UKIP did totally fuck it. It might have been a good idea to get Sargon of Akkad to come in and mobilise his base of people and get them into the party and give this kind of eggy kind of youth thing going on, even though he's 38 years old. So to stand the real mistake is standing him as an MP draws a level of scrutiny which clearly he was not prepared for. There was no preparation or groundwork done on ameliorating the Jess Phillips rape comment tweet. And in fact, as it went through and he started kind of lashing out like a little child, he kind of started making these litigating the joke and making these even more horrendous kind of comments about Jess Phillips. And honestly, the whole UKIP's whole MEP campaign became about Sargon of Akkad and about rape. And Jerry Batten was obviously very frustrated with this, and every time he got asked about it, he would huff and puff and stuff. But UKIP shouldn't have had the collapse that they did, and it speaks to the kind of political acumen of Farage, that he was able to keep this kind of claptrap kind of punisher on the road for so long, because he kind of sticks together the Brexit Party from a whole disparate group, Revolutionary Communist Party people, and then
the ex-editor of Loaded magazine,
Jacob Rees-Mogg's sister, and all these fucking mental people, just kind of sticks together. And Widdicombe. And fucking Widdicombe is now an MEP.
And Widdicombe and Claire Fox are the same party.
What is going on with that? But they were stitched together by the cult of Farage, ultimately.
For those people who are not in the UK, it's important that you just go and look these people up on Wikipedia because they have great entries. Claire Fox, Anne Widdecombe. What's the name of the guy? Martin Dorby, the guy who was the... he used to be the editor of the Lads Mag.
Bunch of fucking freaks, I tell you.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. Even the person who set up the Brexit Party, Catherine Blakelock, no relation, had to resign like almost as soon as the party became like an actual electoral vehicle, and as soon as it registered with the Electoral Commission, because it was found out that she had some like really anti-Islamic comments in her past on Twitter. She'd retweeted people like Tommy Robinson. She'd retweeted Mark Collett, who's like an out-and-out white supremacist.
You're like an ideological neo-Nazi.
Yeah, much more so than like Tommy Robinson is. I mean, Tommy Robinson's not a neo-Nazi. So yeah, even though Brexit seemed to be this, the Brexit Party seemed to be this kind of single-issue party that was basically saying like one thing and one thing only, always, as with like libertarians, for example, you think, okay, they want free markets, they want these kind of set of quite like boring technocratic things. You always find that they're underneath the surface. They're like completely like, you know, absurd, racist monsters, more or less without exception. I'm not sure that I agree with that Sargon kind of fucked it all up. Like, I think maybe actually, I mean, like, I think he was definitely poisonous, completely poisonous. I'm not sure that people don't vote UKIP on the basis that they're like offended by the kind of outrageous things that some people in UKIP have said, right? Like, they've always had that problem. They've absolutely always had that problem, and it's never really been a kind of issue. I guess like Nigel Farage was much better at like gatekeeping on the right. He's much better at kind of shutting people out. Much better at kicking people out.
Like, you can invite Milo, you're not politicking the whole thing.
And people like Nigel Farage, even the kind of candidate before, Henry Bolton. He in the leadership election tried to say that Anna-Marie Waters couldn't stand because she had brought the party into disrepute by basically being an anti-Muslim activist, and she kind of went off to start For Britain. All these people who have been kicked out, Bolton and also Robert Kilroy Silk, Paul Nuttall, they've all gone off to start their own kind of ventures. So there's kind of a splitting effect that's taking place on the far right as people kind of rise through UKIP, attempt to do something kind of charismatic, believe in their own kind of charisma in a kind of Faragian way. Completely fail, split off, become invested in kind of microscopic communities, which are then being kind of brought back into the fold. So Anne-Marie Waters turned up at the Free Tommy event back in 2018, and she was one of the main people talking. If you don't know about her,
Anne-Marie Waters was at Tommy Robinson's MEP event launch.
Right, yeah. So she's being kind of brought back into the fold. My point is that Gerald Batten, in some sense, all people who have kind of sharded off of UKIP in this kind of period of fraction after Nigel Farage leaves in 2016,
at least he steps down from leader.
Yeah, he steps down from the leadership. When he steps down from being leader, all these people kind of who try and come to dominate the party in his vacuum, make their own parties. All of them fail, and now they're actually being brought back in. So UKIP is, I think UKIP is like a long term,
like reconsolidating.
Yeah, I think it is a long term threat. I'm not sure the Brexit Party is going to stick around for longer. But I mean that's. I'm not entirely convinced that
Nigel Farage stays in the Brexit Party is going to continue to be a political force. Whether they break through into MP in a general election, something Nigel Farage has never been able to do.
No.
Whatever vehicle he's had is another question. But he knows how to run an MEP campaign. He is the guy in the European elections that people turn to when they want to vote Brexit.
Yeah.
And he's got that cash in. He's not going to lose it anytime soon unless he turns out he's like, nonce or something.
So my question is basically, like, will UKIP become a new national front?
No, definitely not.
Do you not think they're adopting the kind of panoply of tactics the National Front adopted? Have they not said there are all these people who cannot join this party, who, after a certain kind of crisis point, Nigel Farage here is A.K. Chesterton. He's kicked out of the party, and then John Tyndall becomes the leader. Tommy Robinson joins.
Real reach.
A real reach.
Tommy Robinson is not in UKIP. In fact, in the past few months,
he was an independent MEP. Yeah.
UKIP has distanced itself from Tommy Robinson in some respects. And when Batten leaves, I don't know. It's uncertain whether Batten's going to win the internal UKIP election for leader. If Batten doesn't get in and one of the other people in NEC gets in, then Tommy Robinson's got no chance of UKIP. And I think he already knows that. Clearly, Tommy Robinson, if he could have done, would have run as a UKIP candidate. He would have had a party bit of structure behind him. He hadn't had to raise so much money. He would have had a certain amount of publicity that's not just traded off his celebrity. But they didn't want to do that. The UKIP ran against him in the MEP election. and so did the Brexit Party, and obviously that's why he didn't. The problem Tommy Robinson faced is his kind of constant weakness. He's got a large audience, but it's thinly spread across the whole world. So like when he comes to like projecting like political authority in one particular locality, he's left wanting because he's only got 2% of the whole population across the UK. In the northwest, he's just 2% still. So when people come to his free Tommy demos, they're coming from all over the country, and that's why he's never going to. The political path is a dead end for Tommy Robinson, ultimately, and he can't break out. Like we said this in the episode we did about him, but Tommy Robinson has 55% name recognition, which is basically only Jeremy Corbyn and May or whoever's going to be next Prime Minister has that level of name recognition, because they're in the news all the time. But he's got like a 6% approval rating for the whole country, and he's got like the maddest disapproval rating. Forget Trump. Tommy Robinson's got like a 40% disapproval rating.
There's that amazing video of people in Manchester being asked what they think of him standing there.
Yeah, and you just say cunt.
Yeah. Very simple political commentary, but very effective. Yeah, like you said in the episode about neo-fascism, fascism is a slur, but it's an effective slur. We should keep using it for that reason.
He's got.
Same goes for that word.
He can't. He's not going. And this is Tommy's going to turn back to street agitation in some way. The election is not a path he can take.
But I think simultaneously he's going to turn back to street agitation for sure. But UKIP is also going to become much more focused on street organising. Like their biggest boost of membership was during the uptick in kind of far right activity in summer of 2018, and it was all about street movements. It was all about like justice and the betrayal of the working class by the state, by the powers that be. That kind of thing that kind of focus they can get behind differentiates them from the Brexit Party, right? Which is nevertheless like has a kind of a narrative of betrayal, but it's much more narrowly focused narrative of betrayal, right? It's narrative betrayal of like a particular policy rather than like a full scale complete abandonment of the working class, which is what UKIP in its new formulation can pursue.
I think you're kind of leading a lot of the contradictions that are still in UKIP. Like a lot of people have left UKIP, a lot of key organisers, whole sections of branches, but there is still like a majority on the NEC, and there's still like a majority of the membership are like old UKIP, like as active organisers. Like I think Paul Joseph Watson and Count Dankula and Sargon of Akkad, they brought in a lot of members, but how that translated across to beyond the meme of it, how it translated off into like actual political activity, I think was very minimal from what I can tell. And these contradictions mean that I think UKIP can never be like a viable like National Front style party, because the National Front was also driven by contradictions, but it was between whether you be like super fash or whether you like temper the fash in order to get some power and then you can be super fash. Like the contradiction was around political method rather than like such a sharp ideological thing. It's like there's a great difference between like the high Toryism of the old guard of UKIP, who were like really Tories basically, and the like kind of nihilistic lol brigade of these like YouTube stars, which is just there's no relation in there.
No, there's no relation there, but there's also no relation between AK Chesterton and like the skinheads who ended up after.
But also that was taking place over like several decades.
Everything's accelerated now.
Decades. I mean,
I'm not making this as kind of I'm not being like I'm kind of tying my flag to this kind of particular prediction.
I think
it's not.
AK Chesterton. I mean, in the National Front there was like an evolution for sure, and I don't think the Chestertonites did not stay in the party after he left. So the National Front was started in what, like 67, 68?
Yep.
And Chesterton left in 71, 72.
Yeah.
That's not a long time, and then you've got all this time of Tyndall's dominance and then the whole Strasserism and the whatever. I'm not certain whether the analogy is that useful, because it was if you think of the League of Empire Loyalists, they're in the context of Britain still having the remnants of an empire. And the threat, the imminence of loss of that empire was what they were playing on ultimately. And they also their tactics were not that of a political party. It was that of like a stunty shock jock kind of a series of stunts like heckling, doing all this stuff that they did.
I mean, I don't think that's necessarily totally different from the way that, for example, like UKIP, without taking any substantial amount of political power at all, managed to force the biggest crisis in British politics, like since, well, maybe ever, right?
I mean, you can't place that all on UKIP. There was like a big portion of the Tory party and Tory party MPs who David Cameron was always trying to shut down as well.
Yeah, so like there's a kind of a tension here between. When I'm making this analogy, I'm not saying, of course, like all the actors fall into place exactly, and like we're hearing just kind of watching like a complete kind of a revival of exactly the same situation. But I think there's like a wing of the Tory party. There's a wing of the Conservative Party. There's a kind of wing of the Tory party, like a Tory-ish wing of that party, or a high Tory wing of that party that is more sympathetic to a street movement that is kind of pulling to the right of it. That street movement undergoes a kind of a crisis when it gets something happens to it. So the League of Empire Loyalists becomes more fragmented, becomes the National Front. UKIP has a kind of crisis of its own success, succeeds in leaving the European Union. And then that kind of through some sort of pattern transformation, the more radical and more like street inclined parts of that movement win out. And there's a polarisation on the right as well. So there's a right of the Tory party, and there's the street movements. There's the National Front versus like the right wing of the Tory party. And these kind of dynamics are also here in the contemporary picture. I'm not suggesting that the UKIP is going to be nearly as significant as the National Front was, just because it doesn't have the numbers, because political communities in many ways have moved on. But there are parallels. The Lowell Brigade, as you point them out, are not dissimilar in some terms from the skinheads who join after Rock Against Communism.
I mean, yeah. And there are, just to maybe play into your point a little bit, there are like Batten has these links to the DFLA. He spoke at their national conference, and the DFLA were opposed as fascists by anti-fascists in October. And there's a really there's an AFN expose, the Polish section of DFLA of like just out and out neo-Nazis.
The DFLA of the Democratic Football Lads Alliance.
Thank you.
Who did a series of massive, well, fairly like massive events in 2017, 2018. Kind of mass protests, ostensibly against terrorism, this kind of thing, but actually turning into anti-Islamic, anti-Muslim politics pretty quickly.
Well, and that happened over time. Initially, they didn't like ISIS, really.
I don't like ISIS either.
No, me neither. Farage used these Polish Nazis who were like associated with the DFLA for security, and so did Tommy Robinson.
Yeah.
So there are links there, but I mean, not Farage. Sorry, Batten used those.
Yes,
but I still don't really see it. I think UKIP's still irrelevant, and I don't see the development of like a particular like street movement. Like the people, the skinheads analogy, the Lowell Brigade, they're not a street. They're like basement dwellers. They're not like a street. Like you. I mean, we have seen these people come out on the street when last year for the Free Tommy, Sargon of Akkad was trying to do this liberalist party thing, and he got about 80 of like the biggest losers you've ever seen. Like neckbeard losers just to come out and like stand around with him. We literally should have a conversation about milkshaking.
Yeah, I think we support milkshaking. What is else there to say? I guess it's like it's interesting because it's like the IRL equivalent of a meme. Like there's so much plausible deniability in milkshaking someone.
I mean, it is a product of like literally the meme culture. Like the same thing with the egg boy thing.
Yeah,
was that he did the egg thing, got beaten up, and then he instantly became like a meme. And the same thing happened with the milkshaking. Like Tommy Ross got milkshake once. Everyone was like, ha ha ha, and then the video came out of the guy just tipping it over him full on, and it went viral. And people were like, where's the next one happening? Let's do it to other people, and it kicked off very quickly. And it wouldn't have happened without that kind of like left meme culture that's developing.
I mean, like I guess like in the internet age, the thing that is most useful are just like really small bits of highly reproducible kind of tactical things, right? Which memes are, and so are milkshakes.
12 rules.